Flight. Hope you're doing great today. I'm going to do a little video here. This is part of a 4-part series of videos that introduce students to certain elements of targeting, specifically approaches to target. When we look at market segments, we're choosing which market segments are the most attractive and thinking about how that strategy plays out. So this is a fairly short video, but what we look at here specifically are elements that deal with scope. And when I say scope, I mean levels of aggregation. Like if you think of the market as one big huge pool of consumers, that's a very broad perspective. But on the other end of the spectrum, if you think of the market as groups or individual people or individual consumers as individuals, and we're selling directly to individuals, and that's a very narrow perspective or scope of your view of the market. So again, we go from a very, very large, all-encompassing view, and we call that mass marketing, to a very narrow one-to-one marketing, where we think of each customer as its individual buying unit, and we try to position our product individually to each one of those consumers. And then you have everything in between. So those are the two bookends, if you will, and that's, you know, kind of we look at these different designations, if you will, where we have mass marketing at one end, and then we'll have personalized appeals and one-to-one marketing that's largely driven by customer relationship management, CRM programming. That's what it allows us to do. And that's how that's made up. So just initially looking at these first three, and to this point, we spend a lot of time thinking about differentiated marketing when we actually pick and choose target markets or target segments, and we might choose one or we might choose a couple. And there are some other deviations there too. So just looking at this from first the broad and then moving in, this idea of mass marketing, you're probably familiar with the term. You're probably, kind of aware of what mass marketing generally means. And it's not particularly challenging. The idea is we take all the consumers who have a need or a want for our product or product category, and we don't distinguish among them differences. We try to pitch our product the same way to all of them together, and again, don't find distinction or don't find nuances that would separate them into groups. So this is like not segmenting. If you don't segment your market and you keep the market as one contiguous unit, then you are thinking from a mass market perspective. Now, there are some pros and cons to this, as you can imagine. From a consumer perspective, individual consumer wishes and desires are not necessarily met, because it's like a one-size-fit-all type of a product approach, where one product or one approach to the market that we use when we design our marketing mix, it is intended to satisfy everybody, and so any one individual will be satisfied, but not perfectly. That's kind of the idea here. So the product offered is broadly defined and intended to satisfy multiple customer needs and multiple segments and market. It really doesn't take into distinction that there are nuances in consumers. But only a single marketing program is needed. So in other words, we can do one ad campaign, we can do one distribution strategy, we can do one pricing strategy. We don't have to make a lot of changes, and that creates a lot of efficiency. So when we're thinking about best using our marketing and sales expense budget, this is a good way to kind of get a lot for your money, or expose a lot of people to your product and build awareness to a large audience. However, it doesn't finely tune the approach. But at the end of the day, the operational costs of bringing a marketing campaign to bear is lower when it comes to this type of an approach. So it definitely has its benefits from that perspective, though maybe the market is not as well served as we would perhaps like. Now, once we start to segment, we have groups of consumers or market segments that share certain characteristics. And so the next level up, if you will, is when we start picking and choosing those market segments to focus upon. And there's really a couple different ways to do this. And so one of which is to pick one large market segment. So this is not the mass market. This isn't everybody. This is one group of consumers that share something in common that we want to target. Now, if we're using a single segment approach, we might call this market concentration, all within this sort of differentiated marketing term or target marketing concept. But if we're choosing one, that one segment has to be large enough for us to be able to have the volume that we need to make money and to turn a profit and break even and all that stuff. So we might choose one really well-defined, significant in size segment, and then we would perhaps try to satisfy that segment to the best of our ability with a product line that is full and that is complete, and we want to try to our goal is to gain as much market share in that segment as we possibly can, understanding that that segment is only one part of the mass market. Okay, the second approach to this is using a multi-segment design where instead of one large segment, we choose 2 or 3 or 4 smaller segments, and we do a multi-segment approach. And sometimes this is an adjacent segment or strategy. That's one of the terms that we'd use, but it's multi-segmenting, and that'd be kind of the thought there. Right, the next level up is when we take a small or a niche segment marketing strategy. And the approach here is when we find a niche or a small, well-defined group of consumers, our goal, if we want to attract them, is to be known within that group as the main dominant feature or product or brand for that market segment. So there's a lot of like personality stuff that goes on here where your brand and your product matches the personality very closely of that small niche space or types of customer that's there. Our goal here is to be the dominant player, so by default there are going to be a lot of there aren't going to be a lot of competitors, and the ones that are there are going to be very weak relative to you or compared to you. Your goal is to again gain lots of market share, but also what's important is that these customers will be extremely loyal to you. It's a commitment and loyalty issue that you're trying to develop, like a friendship with these customers, so that they'll pay a price premium. They're willing to pay above and beyond what one would normally pay for your product because they love your brand and they love what you do. And here's the trade-off. While you're not going to have a lot of sales volume, your unit sales numbers are not going to be particularly high, your profit margin can still be very good because they're paying more for your product than they otherwise would. So you can charge more for your product. You can expect more. You expect more return business in your from your customers. So your churn rate will be lower. So customer lifetime value thus will be higher. So there's a lot of benefits from a financial perspective. Even though you're not selling as many units, you're making far more money per customer than you otherwise would. So that's kind of part of the strategy or part of the reasoning behind this. But again, this would be a small or a concentrated niche group of consumers that have some real unique type of thing that's going on. Now, once we get beyond this, these are kind of the three big ones. The fourth is really sort of this one-to-one type of thing, and different terms will be used in this space. So sometimes people will call it mass customization, and the idea is that we're looking to sell to individual units, but we're looking to customize the offer to all those things, and also to the effect when we get into the CRM work, where you have customers giving us permission, called permission marketing, giving us permission to cater the products specifically and directly towards them. Okay, so again, kind of looking at this in the red box, you've got these concepts going together, and these are all forms of one-to-one marketing, where we're again treating each individual person, if you will, as its own segment. I know that's kind of hard to think about, but each individual person is a unique sales opportunity, as opposed to grouping customers together and calling that a segment. Here we have each customer is looking for a unique experience. So services might be like this. Certainly this is the case when we do business to business sales. A lot of times we think of each business customer as a single unit, and we want to, again, we're going to design the product specifically for that customer. We're going to design our sales pitch and our messaging directly and specifically to them, and so on. So this mass personalization, mass customization types of stuff create a very, very deep customer intimacy. And this clearly requires a lot of information about the customer. You have to know a lot about the customer to be able to deliver those fine details. And CRM helps do that. It helps perform that for us. So you can't really have a one-to-one strategy without deep knowledge of the customer. And if we're doing this with high sales volumes, the only way to have deep knowledge of the customer is by some type of data system that's going to give us the information that we can then use quickly to create unique offerings to the customer. So think of this one-to-one personalization and customization routine as wholly unique product offerings and marketing programs that are designed for each individual customer. This may be more common when you have products that have very high profit margins, specifically luxury products in particular, and also when we think about service organizations or service delivery models. Lawyers, doctors, hairstylists, they all know their customers one-on-one, and the product and the service they provide each customer is obviously customized. It's uniquely designed for that purpose. Now, this is going to be pretty much the opposite of mass marketing when we think of the pros and the cons. The pros here are that the customers get extremely well treated in terms of meeting their needs. Their needs are perfectly met because the value proposition has been designed specifically for them. On the flip side of it, it's very expensive and really challenging to do from a company's perspective, certainly a cost perspective. It's very expensive to do one-to-one programming for each individual customer. Therefore, we require a high profit margin to be able to absorb those costs. Okay, so again, we moved from very abstract, high view of the market as a mass, as a one unit thing, and now we went all the way through. Talked about the targeting, the concentrated targeting, those types of things. Talked about niches and small markets, and then we looked at one-to-one markets as the fourth kind of big component here, and that fulfills the spectrum of scope. And so again, the takeaway from this video is that when we're thinking about entering a market, being a player in the market, we often want to define that scope piece. And it's largely driven by the segmentation work that you've already done. Once you segment the market, you can better understand whether you should approach it as a whole, approach it individually and maybe by segments and how many segments you're going to do and some things like that. Okay, so again, this has been a fairly short video, but a summary of how we start thinking about some of the strategy when we start to enter a market, and the scope in which we're going to enter it with. All right, let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.